Alrighty, thank you guys for showing up. I hope your festival has been going well. People will trickle in. They usually trickle in as things happen. So thank you guys. I'm here with Amanda Shaw, musician, singer, songwriter. You have a lot of hats for sure. I was like
But
reading.
not any that I actually wear because I can't have my hair. Yeah, I have my signature hairstyle. I can't be wearing hats, smushing my hair.
All right, so we're just gonna.
Oh, that sounds like me. One of the first photos of me out in public. I was 7 years old, and I soloed with the Baton Rouge Symphony Orchestra when I was 7. And somebody took a picture from the and it was on the front page of the paper. And the picture they used is a picture of me. And it's a little 7-year-old me. And I'm just like this, and there's one little hair, and I just laugh now because some things never change, And there's me on the front page of the paper like this, And I've seen so many pictures. Apparently, that's just like a thing, I guess,
It works and it still works.
Yeah, that's right.
So you said about 7 is when you did your solo, right?
Yeah, so I started playing music. I started taking lessons when I was 4, and I was watching TV one day, and they showed, a violin on, whatever it was. And I was like, I love the way that looks. I was like, I want to try that. It just something about it looked really magical to me. So my mom took me, we lived in Hammond at the time, and my mom took me to Southeastern, and, she didn't even know, because nobody in my family plays music, so she didn't even know that violins came in sizes. So she went to go buy a violin for me so I could take lessons. And they were like, well, what size is she? And she was like, they come in sizes? So I had to get my arm measured and everything. My first violin was real tiny like this, and I just started taking lessons. And yeah, I took classical lessons there at the community music school in Hammond. There at Southeastern. There's really a lot of wonderful musicians that that go to school there from all over the world. And so I was taking from, the first semester I was taking from a student teacher, but the head of the music department, Dr. Jakob Voldman, he would come and watch my practices in the little practice room. And at the end of the semester, he approached my mom and he said, I want to teach your daughter. And he, I guess, saw something in me, which is really special, And so the head of the music department was my teacher. And it started off taking, 30-minute classes once a week. And, turned into, at one point, by the time I was about like 8 or 9 years old, I was taking 2-hour lessons, 3 times a week. On Saturdays, I was in youth orchestra. And so like that was like a 5-hour day, and then, practicing 2 hours a day by myself, but I loved it. I loved it so much. I had a little brother at that time. My mom had my brother when I was 5, and so I had just started taking, and the baby, she would take him to take a nap, and I would just go practice, in my room by myself while she was taking care of Andrew, when I was little. I just remembered that's one thing I really liked doing, and just something about the violin. It's hard to explain, but if you don't play music, but if you do play music, that like on your instrument, all instruments, when you're using your hands, you find that there's a lot of like patterns, and there's finger patterns, there's musical patterns. And as you learn music, you kind of get in tune with those patterns, and it kind of helps you learn your instrument, and vice versa. As you learn your instrument, more patterns kind of reveal themselves, and, you're able to just kind of make that connection. And something about the violin just made so much sense to me as I, was practicing, these things, and so, yeah.
Excellent. That's so awesome.
Thank you.
So you've been playing since you were 4.
Yes.
That's a long time. So what's been your, or what have
Come
been,
on in. You can, it's not
Yeah.
you can come on in. Nope, okay. Listen, I don't have to hang out with myself. I wouldn't, so.
But what's been some of your biggest inspirations from the time you were little to about now?
Like aspirations, or like things I've wanted to accomplish, or things that have inspired me. I think in the beginning, I loved music. I loved violin. I loved learning my instrument. And, that in the beginning, I think was it. But, as you go along and you learn more music, y'all come on in. Yeah. We're just yapping away. So, but yeah, so, things that have really inspired me, though, all along the way, though, a lot of it really is Louisiana, is growing up here, So when I was about 8 years old, my mom used to go and take me to mulots and michels down like in New Orleans. I don't know if you guys come hang out in New Orleans some, but, there's a lot of Cajun restaurants and, a lot of nights of the week there'd be bands playing, Cajun bands playing, and usually there's a fiddle player. Mitchell Reed was in a band called Charivari who played on Sunday nights at Mulots, and that was my favorite. And they are still those couple of records they made in the 90s. Wow, that's old. I feel so old. But those are still some of my favorite Cajun records, just the way his style of playing, the way they wrote Cajun music and everything. It was really fun. I really enjoyed it. Like, it was energetic, even as like an 8-year-old. Something about the music felt really fun. And I loved watching people dance, and I loved, just the energy behind it, And so Mitchell, who I do credit for a lot of like my musical style, but while the band was setting up and sound checking, he would give me lessons. And so, Mitch, he's from Lafayette, and he would take, when he was a little boy, he took a lot of lessons from like Dennis McGee and the Balfa Brothers and learned a lot of music from them. And those songs he taught to me. Well, me as an 8-year-old kid, I didn't appreciate that statement that I just said now. As an adult, I appreciate that so much because, as we all know, like, being from Louisiana, like, we are a living tradition. Like, I mean, what the songs that I played today, they live through me, and they only survive through people and musicians like performing and recording those songs and sharing them and people dancing. Those songs, the only way they continue to survive is if we continue to pass them down. So it's truly like a special thing to me now as an adult person that many, many years ago, no one's counting here, that I learned these songs, and I just thought it was fun, learning on my little fiddle all these little Cajun songs, and now I get to perform them and share them. And like I said, being able to participate in this tradition of what being from Louisiana is, and as someone who's traveled a lot, and I have been spending a lot of time out of state, especially recently, and it just makes you realize, like, when we live here, we don't realize, all the time, like, not that I want to say we take it for granted, but sometimes we don't realize in our everyday lives how ingrained these traditions are and how unique it makes being from Louisiana, and you go to other places that don't have those traditions, and life is really a lot more boring and a lot more plain, than a place like this where like a weekend could be, is something special. It's like, oh, no. This is the weekend that we have, the meat festival, the meat pie festival or whatever, because it's been going on. And, my aunt, she used to make the meat pies for the original festival. You know what I mean? Like, every weekend here in Louisiana, there is something. And we have so many, we have obviously, and I obviously love Cajun music, but the fact that we have so many traditions here from so many different backgrounds and so many different cultures is really awesome. And that we all live sort of really harmoniously. And like, I think the number one thing too about being from Louisiana is like how we support each other and like how we, kind of, again, just live in that very harmonious way. And I find all of those elements of just simply being from Louisiana and being a part of what being from Louisiana is, that's like the number one inspiration to me, whether it is playing Cajun music or writing music, whether I'm recording with other artists that play other styles of music that aren't for me. I always keep in mind, again, we're people that embrace all these different cultures and all these different things. And so I'm able to then take that and say, okay, well, I can embrace this person who plays, reggae music or whatever. Let me see how I can bring my fiddle and, and we can make this work, whatever it is, there is always, a little bit of that spirit of Louisiana that I take with me everywhere I go.
Awesome. Like, Louisiana's great.
It really is. I could go on and on about it. I could do a whole other 45 minutes about just loving Louisiana.
I mean, we can talk a little bit more about it. You say you also play out of state and everything like that. So
I do,
how
yeah.
Does it, like, what are some of the differences that you've noticed, or are people still like into it when you go out of state as they are here? Like,
It's interesting. Different places are different, react different. Sometimes you go play a show somewhere. Maybe I won't name names. Maybe, I don't know, Nebraska. I don't know. Maybe you're like, and you play and you're like, wow, I hope those people had a good time. They're going to fire me, and then you have people come up to you afterwards and be like, that was one of the best things I've ever seen. And it's like, well, I couldn't tell from up there because you guys were just staring at me. And then you go to some places where you don't even speak the same language. I tell you what, one of my favorite memories from playing music, it was my 21st birthday. I did a tour in Brazil, and on the night of my 21st birthday, it was the night before my 21st birthday going into my birthday, I played in Rio de Janeiro on Ipanema, the beach, and they have a park there. And there's a promoter there that loves Louisiana, so much so that his production company is called Bourbon Street, because that's what they think of with Louisiana, right? But he loves Louisiana music, and he's the one who brought us there. So they set up this concert on the beach on Ipanema. Like, it's a very, everybody knows that. You've seen it in the movies, and it's my 21st birthday, and there's 10,000 people, shoulder to shoulder, just dancing. And keep in mind, I'm singing in English, I'm singing in Cajun French, which isn't even French, they speak Portuguese, and so we're not even speaking the same language at all. But man, the energy that I felt that night, the people were so happy. They had, it was so, I wish I could put into words the excitement that you could feel it in the air. And so much so they had told us beforehand. So Rio apparently has a sound ordinance, whatever, like at 10 o'clock, they had told us, they were like, at 10 o'clock, you are done. And if you are not done, they will unplug you. They don't care if you are in the middle of your last note. They will turn 10 o'clock. They turn all the sound off in Rio. And I was like, all right. So we're watching the clock and making sure we're not going to go over to 10 o'clock. About 2 minutes before 10 o'clock, some man gets up on the stage in the middle of my show and starts speaking in Portuguese to the whole crowd. Again, 10,000 people, like shoulder to shoulder. And they're all screaming at what this guy is saying. And the promoter runs up to me on stage. He's like, do you know what they're saying? And I was like, no, I don't know what they're saying. He goes, that's the mayor of Rio. He's just lifted the curfew for one night only for your show. And and so that we played another 45 minutes there on the beach, just everybody dancing, having a good time. They loved every minute of, the Cajun songs we played. We played, all kinds of music, and they just were dancing and dancing and dancing, and they had to like pull a van up to the stage and get us in the van to drive us away because people wouldn't go home. And again, it's just like the power of music that you don't even speak the same language as everyone else in the room, and but you could feel, but we were speaking the same language, through music, that we were connected, and that like they enjoyed it, and something about their culture, I think, connected with our culture that night, and that they felt it, and we, we were spiritually able to, through music, be able to connect with one another regardless of the language barriers or whatever, so that was a really memorable night, so yeah, it's always different everywhere that you go, but there really is no place quite like home,
Right.
Yeah.
But that speaks really well to the power of music to like connect people. So I wanted to talk a little bit about songwriting. So how does that influence the way that you approach writing songs and stuff like that?
That is such a good question. So I love writing music. That's a big part of who I am and what I've done for a long time. When I was 13, I got signed to Rounder Records for a development deal. And so one of the pieces of that, was they put me with a lot of songwriters just to see what kind of material, would come up. And, I've done a lot of songwriting sessions in Louisiana with very talented people, and I've been to LA. I've written songs with a guy named Matthew Gerard, who he wrote, the Kelly Clarkson hit Breakaway, and he's written, I think almost all the High School Musical songs. And like, I mean, this guy is like a legend, you know, in LA. So much so he has a separate insurance for musicians than he does regular people that come to his house. So, but that's a story for another time. And then, you know, I've actually been this last month, I've actually been in Nashville working with Dolly Parton's producer, writing material and things. And, you know, everybody has their own way of doing it. I feel like I'm someone who's always really open to learning. I think, you know, the only way you get better is by having your ears open and having your eyes open and seeing how other people do things, you know. And I think that kind of applies also to regular life, not just songwriting, you know. But I think the one thing that I love is like, it's almost like a secret weapon, right? Is like, no matter what, no matter whether it's LA, Nashville, here at home, where I am, whenever I'm collaborating with people, and again, regardless of the style of music, having that piece of like Louisiana culture in my back pocket makes whatever project I'm working on unique, because, you know, it is such a, you know, I grew up learning Cajun music, and it's its own thing. You know, there's no other style of music out there that's quite the same. You know, it's dance music, the rhythms, you know, the melodies, the types of melodies. And so like having that and having that knowledge, knowing those songs, that's always something that like I can confidently always bring to the table when I'm collaborating with people, because, you know, that's something unique to me, you know. It doesn't matter if you've written, you know, how many gold records you have, you know, if you're not from Louisiana, that's something you don't know. And so being able to share that with all these people always really, it always makes me obviously feel really proud. And it's also another great way to connect with people and kind of be able to, again, share and exchange, you know, musical knowledge.
Right. And like circle back just a second. You said the production company in Brazil was Bourbon Street, right?
Yeah.
So how does like going on tour and writing music, how does that kind of educate people on all the different things Louisiana culture is specifically through music?
Well, yeah, in terms of like how are these things connected and everything. Right. Yeah, you know, I mean, for me, it's always just, again, being myself and just bringing that and again, just bringing that spirit of Louisiana in that, you know, we're a pretty joyful people. I mean, when you look at our history, I mean, so many of our people from all over the state, you know, we've gone through really hard times. And I think there's a deep understanding of togetherness and each otherness. You know, we just went through a really rough couple of years, you know, we don't even need to talk about it. And I think there's a lot of people who really had to grapple with that for the first time. But between the fact that we've had hurricanes or like, you know, Cajun culture being, you know, being endangered, you know, there are so many pieces of Louisiana history. And so we've kind of gone through that time and time again, and we're so resilient as a community. And I think that makes us truly unique, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? Just so music is like also storytelling, right?
It is, yeah.
So where do you see the story heading specifically for this kind of genre and these kind of...
Oh, yeah. You know, that's really funny that you asked that, because I feel like that's something, again, I've been really working on this last like month or so. Again, you know, being up in Nashville, working with, you know, Dolly Parton's producer, which is like, I mean, she's obviously, I mean, everybody knows she's the queen. So, so, and I mean, these are people that really know what they're doing. But I think like, again, just clicking and saying, okay, like, you know, we can take our culture, we can honor our culture, we can honor the root of our music, we can honor all of those traditions, but how do we make them tangible for people who aren't from here? How do we make them understand and bring that? Because we know how great it is being from Louisiana. We know how great our music is. We know how great our food is, you know? And so like, how do we kind of bring that to a wider audience and kind of like make that something? And I think that's definitely, you know, a lot of where my heart lies is always being like, you know, anytime I'm writing music or playing even traditional music, it's like, all right, you know, this is the root of the music. Here's the true story of what this, you know, the music is telling, even if it's a dance song, you know, here's the root of it. But how do we make it, even a Cajun two-step, like Osan two-step, which has no lyrics or anything like that. So how do we approach it and play it in a way that even if you're a 10-year-old in the audience, you feel something and maybe you move and maybe you want to wiggle your booty, you know, or whatever. And you're wiggling and your mom tells you to stop, you know, but it's like, you know, how do we make even those moments, you know, of traditional Cajun music, how can we like make them fun and energetic and make them, so even if it's something you don't innately understand, maybe you're from Brazil or from wherever, but you do have a feeling of understanding what that's being communicated. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I do have 3 really great musicians who back me up, and that's like cannot go unsaid, is that I could not do what I do without having the support, you know, of a band that understands my vision and is willing to go there with me, you know, and putting that emotion, you know, out there. Because at the end of the day, that's all it is music isn't just, it's a language and it's unspoken, you know, there's not necessarily words to it, but when you're playing an instrument, you're emoting something. And so all 4 of us, when we're like on stage playing, you know, we are putting an energy or an idea out there. And so how do we collectively say like, you know, this is Cajun music and it's fun and it's fun to dance to. And this is what we're trying to put out here energy wise, you know, and just always trying to bring that positivity and again, make it sort of, just tangible and relatable even to people who maybe aren't from the same place that we come from, you know?
That common language, that contagious energy kind of thing. That makes a lot of sense. Music is so important to Louisiana. I mean, everywhere has their own kind of thing, but Louisiana specifically, there's music all the time. I went to grad school in Lafayette for a while, and music all the time.
Yeah.
So is that something that you think has really influenced the way that you've approached wider touring shows? Just that kind of...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, come on. Don't be shy. If you like silly stories, this is the place for you. So, yeah. So, I forgot the question.
It's okay. I was about to say it's Monday, but it's not.
It's not a Monday.
So has that like the musical culture and that energy that we have, like music playing all the time, has that influenced the way that you've approached other venues outside of the state?
Yeah. So yeah, I've done a lot of touring, you know, obviously like throughout the country and even other countries and things like that. Yeah, it's definitely really, it's really fun. Again, it also has to do with the fact that I really enjoy playing with my band too, right? And that we're, you know, a band that we get along really well, both, you know, on stage and off the stage. They're my family and everything. I think that has a lot to do with it. And again, a lot of that's very Louisiana too. You know, sometimes you go on the road and you meet bands and you're like, I don't know what's going on, but I do not think they like each other, you know? So, but it's always fun, you know, to go play on the road and kind of share that, you know, with even like musicians and things like that, you know? Sometimes, you know, you meet people that are open to it. Sometimes you meet people that are not so open to it, but I love getting up on stage, you know, and sometimes I'll say this much. I think sometimes I'll show up to a place where nobody knows me, especially when I was a teenager and I was really coming up, and sometimes they'd see a little 5-foot, you know, girl walk out on stage with a fiddle and they think, oh, okay, she's going to sing some little songs about a little something, maybe a little heartbreak. I don't know. Like, I think, you know, sometimes people would think that, and I just would love, and sometimes at soundcheck, I'll play into that, you know, I'll just play a little song or something. And then when I come out to do my show, I like to give it to them and give them all the energy. And then they're like, I can't even believe, you know? So, I mean, you know, it's fun kind of being able to go out there and be, you know, show that there's a wide range. And, you know, like Cajun music, it's both fun and energetic, but like there's also really emotional songs, you know, and even when you look at traditional Cajun songs, you know, a lot of those songs are about, I mean, you know, those songs written in like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, life was hard. You got a lot of farmers and people, you know, that had really hard lives. And, people, had to kind of like work really hard all week, and then the weekend would come and then there'd be a fade au do, right? And so like a lot of songs are maybe about some heartbreak. Maybe the songs are about, having a hard life. But ultimately the moral of the story is always like, it's going to be okay, And so again, just carrying that kind of spirit, and who doesn't relate to that? I mean, that's we might not be all farmers now, but man, who doesn't relate to that? Life is so hard for so many of us. Like we all have stuff, we all have baggage, and we all have things, whether it's family or jobs or, being pulled in a million directions, we all have really hard things going on, but who doesn't need like a little, pick me up, sometimes you need songs to talk about how sad you are, but sometimes, and I think again, that's part of like when I'm songwriting and when I'm coming up with songs and things like that. I love the flip side of the story is yes, life is hard, but man, we can all get through it, and we'll be better on the other side of it.
Absolutely, and that says something about building community, right?
That's exactly right. And again, we have so many wonderful communities here in Louisiana. We really do, and and I love it. I love visiting. I think one of the things that's so special to me is traveling all over the world. And then I love coming to Natchitoches. I love coming to LaRose. People will ask me, they'll be like, what's your favorite show you've ever played? And I think they always think it's going to be some like playing in Brazil, or whatever, which that's real fun too. But man, some of the best times, and I'm not even blowing smoke or anything. It really is coming home, because that feeling of community, you just cannot, you can't substitute it there's no way else you can do it, I'm going to tell you something. I have been missing home the last 2 weeks because I've been staying in Tennessee. And, it's just one of those things that clicked in my mind. It's such a uniquely Louisiana thing, right? Maybe you go to the grocery store and, for me, Mr. Ed, who works in the produce section, I don't even know Mr. Ed's last name, but boy, is he one of my favorite people to see every time I go to the grocery store. And we'll talk a little bit about maybe the Saints. He always loves talking about the Saints, I'm like, Mr. Ed, what do you think they're going to do this week, And he said, I'll tell you what I think they'll do this week, And it's just so awesome. And I tell you what, I tried cracking a couple jokes at the coffee shop in Tennessee, and it was a tough crowd. I did not get a lot back. And I was like Dorothy. I clicked my heels, and I was like, I don't think I'm in Kansas anymore. I live in New Orleans, so I do. But I grew up on the North Shore. I grew up in Hammond and in Mandeville. No, I was not in the fiddling contest. No. Yeah, but there's a lot of talent. I'm gonna have to try to go check that out, right, before I go home, because I know there's a lot of talented fiddle players for sure.
Speaking a little bit about community. What's one of your favorite stories about you and your band? Whether that's traveling, a particular
I don't
show?
know if that's a PG story. I'm just kidding. Oh man, I mean, we always have such a good time, traveling and hanging out with each other. And again, I think it's really awesome when you have people you play music with that, some you get along with them, on the stage, you get along with them off the stage. They're real fun to just joke around with, and I give them a hard time, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a particular one story. I mean, we've had some real good times hanging out, in Brazil, and just all over. I forget where all we've been, but we always have a real good time,
which is great. It's all about.
That's exactly what it's
kinship,
about.
Community, music, that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah.
What's a couple of your favorite songs to play with them? Do you have any favorites that you like that just gets you this is...
Oh man, that's a good question. But I don't think I have, every show is always different. I don't make set lists or anything. I do have sometimes an idea. I usually have a few songs that I choose from that I start with, that I always know. There's about 3 songs that I always choose from. And there's always a couple of songs that always go at the end of my set. But other than that, what happens in the middle, a lot of it is let's just go. A lot of whenever and the reason for that is I found early in my career, I would make a set list and I'd be like, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna give them a show, and I'd be like, here's the set list I'm gonna do, and I'd, make it. And then sometimes you get up on stage, and even though you think you've made the best set list of all the songs you want to give, but if that's not what the audience wants to hear that day, how are you going to feel when you go home and like, was that the point of it? Is the point of playing music to just like show off and be like, this is what I can do. Here are the songs I can play. No, music again is about really sharing a moment. And so if that's not the audience, you might think I'm going to go out there and play a bunch of dance songs, and then sometimes the audience, they really want to hear stories and they want to hear you sing songs, and they want to hear you talk about the ideas from the songs that you wrote and everything. And so then you got to kind of change directions, or vice versa. Sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to go out there and sing all of these songs, that I wrote. And sometimes people just want to dance, That's not about me playing, oh, this song has this lick that I want to show you or whatever I'm going to put out there because I think it's, awesome. Sometimes it's, people just want to dance and they're just having it. Like today, people were having a good time. And I have a lot of songs that maybe had I written a set list, I would have gone out there and been like, oh, this is going to be great because I think, but a lot of what I do on stage is I really read the room, and I like it really is, there is an energy, and I feel like I do have a pretty good feel for it at this point of walking into a room, starting off my set, and kind of seeing where that goes and seeing what the mood of the people in the room is, and then kind of creating, a moment and playing songs and playing at tempos. Sometimes you play a song a little slower if people are trying to dance. Maybe you play that waltz just a little more slow so people can catch those steps, there's just different things like that. And when you really pay attention, to the room and how people are feeling, that creates a more memorable experience for both me and the audience. And I can go home and be like, man, I had a great time because I know everybody else had a great time too. And that's more important to me than going out there and being like, this is my favorite song. This is the song I want to play because, it makes me happy. But ultimately, at the end of the day, having an enjoyable experience with the people who come to my shows. Sometimes it's somebody who's never seen me before. Sometimes it's people who come to every show that I play, and for me, that's more memorable, and that makes the experience it makes it more fun, and it makes my job more fun, knowing that I've given a performance that may not it's not really about me, it's about us,
Right. Which I think echoes your earlier
talk
about like community and that universal language and energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna turn it over and see if any of our audience members has a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm very curious about, I know that in my childhood, I felt like South Louisiana was losing its culture really rapidly.
Yeah.
And, a person my age, I saw you coming through your childhood years and your teenage years and coming into what you're doing now. How do you see the culture of Cajun music? Is it something that the young people are picking up and running with, or do you see, is it coming back?
I think so. Yeah. Especially, and you said you had some school years out in Lafayette, and I think so you can probably back me up on this. I think actually, yeah, I do know that there was a time that like the culture really kind of dipped, but I think there are a lot of young people who feel connected to that, and they do understand the importance of, preserving culture. And again, that the culture survives through people, and that's how it survives. And I think there definitely in the Lafayette area, I know there's a lot of young people who have Cajun bands, and they have, shows and dances, and that culture really survives, through a lot of those young. I know that there's a lot of young bands out there that are out there playing. With that said, I think that I think it's important to both support traditional Cajun music, and I think it is also important though to also be open to how music moves and changes. It's a kind of it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you don't want to lose the culture, and you always want to have that, because again, it's like an, not an artifact, but it is like a little treasure, and again, we have to kind of protect it and take care of it. But people change, things change, life evolves, life as we know it now is not the same as it was 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and I think we do have to be open to allowing music as well, to kind of have both things and to allow both traditional music, traditional Cajun music, and maybe more popular versions of that to live next to each other, because again, we have to have the help of outside people too. We have to have other people that aren't from here invested in it, and they haven't been through what we've been through. They don't know it like we know it. So we have to relate to them. And I think, and again, that's why my shows are kind of built the way they are. I play both traditional Cajun songs, but also I write songs that maybe are more pop or country, because it's about kind of making it open so that maybe people who wouldn't naturally go to Cajun music or listen to Cajun music would be interested in listening to Cajun music. So I think it's important to support both of those, both sides of that, That's a great question. Thank you. Yes.
In your opinion, what's the best way to actually transfer Cajun culture or Cajun music to the younger generation? How do you envision music or preserve Cajun music?
Yeah. Again, I think a lot of it is writing. People, Cajun music, Dennis McGee, he was writing from experience. All the best music, not just Cajun music, but all the great music. We'll use Dolly Parton as an example. All of her songs came from her. She wrote about being poor in Tennessee. That was a real experience, and people up in Tennessee have an experience that relate to that. And then she's also obviously known world round, because her songs extend beyond that. So I think you have to write from experience. And again, honoring the fact that Cajun music is about how life is hard, how life, but life does change, and celebrating that other side. So you have to write from experience, and honoring those roots of what Cajun music is rhythmically and, melodically, but then allowing that music to kind of evolve as it is, because life now is different for young people than life was for young people in the 20s, So, and just kind of allowing them to also have control of what that looks like, because it's input from, all people, that's what music is.
I found out about you in silent music when I was overseas.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's just kind of a funny story, but I was a contractor in Antarctica.
Oh, cool.
Everybody was from Lafayette. I was southern, or originally from Ohio. I ended up down here in Louisiana.
Nice.
I remember going back. All my roommates, all the guys I work with, were all from Lafayette, Bill Platt. So that's
Yeah.
what's the stuff you guys play all the time? I kind of like it.
Yeah. See,
That's how I got exposed to it.
and you're not even from here originally, but you felt something in you, and again, the reason why that is maybe the music that you heard, the person who wrote that first song, whenever you heard Cajun music, it came from a personal place. And so you were able to connect to it, and you connected to that Jolie Blonde. And yeah, so being able to connect to that music and having it out there, and again, that only comes from personal experience. So, allowing young people to write those songs and, supporting that, and kind of just nurturing that. And I think just, allowing that to happen is I think, a good start for sure.
So when you were playing earlier, there were a couple of moments when I turned the mic and I'm like, I had goosebumps. I'm like, oh my God, that's why she's a Louisiana legend.
Oh, thank you.
It's easy for me to say Louisiana legend because that's how we feel. How do you wrap your mind? Do you feel that? Is there something that you have to wrap your mind around to say, well, people say I'm a Louisiana legend?
Well, my dogs certainly don't think I'm a Louisiana legend. They only care about me feeding them. No, that's so nice. But I feel so. It's awesome that I get to do what I get to play music for a living. 100, my whole, that's what I get to do, and I'm really grateful for it. And I'm grateful. I really do get excited, even though I've been performing for 20 some years. I get excited when people come see me play still. Because there's a million things you could do out there. And when people show up to my shows, I just think that's awesome that was the choice that they made. They could do they could literally sit at home, and you could have stayed today and watched Ted Lasso. And you know what? I would not have blamed you if you stayed home and watched Ted Lasso, because that's a good show. But, you know, you came and hung out, and I appreciate it, you know, and it makes me excited, you know, and then it makes me want to put on a good show. It makes me go home and think about, when I'm thinking of the next song, it makes me want to put out, you know, the best thing that I can, you know, and that's the best gift that I could have. So, I mean, regardless of how other people see me, I feel excited that I get to do that with my life, you know, and I love creating. I love being a creator, and I love playing music, and I love being just a creative type. And the fact that there's enough people out there to support my career makes me so grateful. Oh, yeah.
You know, you said you're on the road a lot, and when people think of Louisiana, they think about music, fun, and food.
Yeah.
So whenever you're on the road and you have some downtime, do you and the band, you ever get together and just cook up some Louisiana food? And if so, what's the one dish you like to cook?
Oh, fun. You know, we don't typically get a lot of downtime, like in that sort of way. And when you do, you typically don't have access to do that. With that said, we have had a couple times, you know, we used to do this gig up in Grand Portage, Minnesota, which is about half hour south of the Canadian border on Lake Superior. It's gorgeous. It was Labor Day weekend. We did that for like 10 years. And they put us up in these little cabins up on the reservation. And we would usually take one night and cook, and, you know, and everybody would do something different, you know. Somebody would make a, you know, brisket, somebody would make a, you know, some rice or something, I don't know. And so it was kind of a hodgepodge, but it was, you know, everybody would be in charge of a dish, and that was real fun.
Sounds fun. We have time for one last question. Then I will end on one last question.
Okay, great.
So, I mean, we kind of talked about how young people are still into this music. I see, like you said, in Lafayette especially, and even in Lake Charles, where I'm originally from.
Absolutely, yeah.
Lots of young people are getting into this scene.
More into it, yeah.
Do you have any words or anything that you'd like to say to those young people interested in either playing or writing this kind of music?
Yeah, well, I guess not just to people playing and writing, not just that, but I think just any young person that has a dream that they're truly passionate about, and they have something that they want to put out into the world that's important. Because I mean, you know, don't ever stop. And you just got to keep going no matter what. And I think that that's the important thing, because there are good days and there are bad days. Like, even me, I have a wonderful, wonderful career, but I would be lying to you if I told you that every day I feel 100% great and I feel like, you know, on top of the world every day. You have some really, you know, some days are hard, you know, sometimes you do wonder. And I think that it's important to, one, not pay attention to what anybody else is doing or anybody else is saying. And you got to focus on you and your work and what you're putting out there, because even if it's just one person that feels inspired by that piece of work, well, then you've made a difference in the world. And it's true, you know? And I think it's not about being the most famous person or having, you know, money or whatever. It's about putting good out into the world, because that's what makes our communities better. It makes us better as people, and we're happier, and then we tend to do better for each other. And I think that's important. So being passionate about what you're doing and never letting go and letting up or letting anything that happens to you in your life, don't ever, you know, you don't have to come from a rich family. You don't have to come from the best family, you know, or anything like that. You know, don't let those things dictate, you know, just focus on your work and your art. And that's the most important thing in the world. You know, it will pay you back.
Excellent. What a great response. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. This has been Amanda Shaw. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.